Hello, my friends. God, it's so dumb. And I'm wearing a picture of myself on my shirt. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Adam Rowley with Adam So Fun, and you are back for the December Diamonds Stitch Along. I got a new hanging rack. Yay! Does it fit? Like, no, I'm squished, but hey, it is what it is. And also, I've decided I'm tired of cleaning up so you can only see, like, did I give the illusion that my space is clean? It's not. It is a disaster zone. So, like, all of this stuff piled up over here, I'm tired of moving it because I keep losing things because I don't remember where I hid it to get it out of the way. So you're just going to have to bear with me and you get to see the mess. Also, I just ironed these and that looks horrible. So let's hit this with an iron really quick. So today, we're, I guess, week 3, part 3. We are going to assemble our blocks. So far we've cut, we did our slice down the side, and we have individual block units. So today we're going to be putting these blocks together. So we'll have large ones, small ones, and negative space ones, like this. Remember, this is your quilt. You get to decide how your background's going to go. On my negative space blocks, I did 2 different fabrics. On my piece blocks, I did 1 fabric. In the example that I'm doing, it's going to be a Christmas runner. Why not? I have it. And my example, all of the fabric background is the same. I do still have large and small blocks. I am going to show you, I'm going to make a negative piece block of the large and the small, but I mean, seriously, it's a 4-patch. Either way, it's just a 4-patch. One of them is rectangle. But I'm not going to use it in this runner because I have just enough to do like a runner. I think it's going to look nice. But let me grab my pins. I was all ready. I'm like, yes, I'm ready. And then I wasn't. So let's talk about this. If you watched the putting it together video, and we talked about how to press these seams so that the seams would nest. And what we did, I'm going to lay this out, and I'm pretty sure you can see that on the screen. I mean, it's not perfect because it's not vertical, but whatever. So I have my diamond, I have my unit. We're going to end up sewing the 2 diamonds together. Those seams should nest if you pressed it the way I said. Like, one of them was to the color. I think I pressed red to the color, green to the background. So when I fold these over, these seams should nest. And a matter of fact, this first seam is the easy seam because you're sewing down the center and you don't really have to worry about it because you're not going to sew over that seam at all. So in my real life, I don't pin this. I hold it. But if you're a pinner, we're going to put them together. Make sure these are nice and nested. And we're going to pop a pin and pop a pin. And seriously, like I said, in real life, I'm not pinning this. And then really, if you want to be particular, we can pop one in the middle. So I have 3 pins. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. The one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure these are nested. These are nested nice and tight because that's going to help me later on. And pop goes the weasel. If I were to pin these units, it would be the larger ones if I was going to pin one of them, just because it's a little bit longer. But again, I didn't pin. So now I have my pieces pinned. We're going to do the same thing. Well, let's do it. Little block. And I don't know if you've noticed this. Visual. I am very visual. So I always laid them out. I might have laid them correctly. I don't know why I did it on that side. I might have laid them correctly. Spare thread. And then just folded them over. And I'm not going to pin these ones, but I'm going to stack them. And then I kind of do the same thing I did before. I'm just going to lay it out, stack them together. A rough stack, and kind of zigzag them and offset them so I know where they go. So I know I'm trying to keep them in groups. There we go. And one more. I think all of and I'm not going to pin this one. All of the small blocks have the colors the same way, and I think the two large blocks have them opposite ways. Good job, Adam. So there, that's what I'm taking to my sewing machine. While I'm here, I'll do the same thing with my other blocks. Now, not as important, these are all the same color, but if you were gonna do like I did here, I have some dark ones and some like, we'll say brown and gray. Or here, I have like a light mauve and a teal. I want to make sure that they were offset. So I laid them out and bloop and bloop. These are solid, there's nothing to like match, so those are going there. Oh, and then my little ones. So if like, I pressed a seam into it. I'm a hot mess express. I went to get my hair cut this morning. Do I look fresh? And I was like 2 minutes late, and I'm over there like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I'm late. Oh my gosh, I'm so dumb. All this. He's like, you're okay. I said, I'm a hot mess express this morning. I don't know what's getting over me. Like, I can't remember. I forgot my mask. So I had to get a mask. These negative space blocks, make sure when you sew them that they are 4.5 wide, and then the longer 4 wide, 4.5 tall. You need them longer. So that's what I was doing, is making sure I had them going the right way. Nest and bloop, bloop, bloop. Let's go to the machine. Before we go to the machine, you still have these blocks. You're gonna have 8 of these larger blocks. You're probably thinking like, where are these gonna go? You can't see, but when the row starts at the top, any of the rows that start with the smaller piece, the smaller diamond, this is the filler to fill up that space between the smaller diamond and the top of the quilt. So you can see like it'll line up here. So that's what these pieces are for. So we're gonna save those. Now off to the machine. All right, so here's my stack of pieces I have together. I just happen to have these negative space blocks on top. So I'm gonna sew these first because they're on top. Again, I didn't pin these ones. I'm just gonna make sure my corners match. Make sure that I'm stitching on the 4.5 inch side. And stitch. And stitch. Pop in my next one. And stitch. So now when I get to these units, these are the ones I pinned. So this is the one I pinned. I'm sewing on the long side, and I'm not covering any seams yet. So this is the easy part. This one's pinned, so I don't even have to go back and line it up. I'm not a person who sews over pins. I used to be, and I like to use really thin pins, and someone's like, you're not supposed to do that. I said, I've never had a problem. Boom, exploded a needle. Now I will make sure that this is nice and nested here still when I go through. This is one of my favorite tools. This is just one side is a seam ripper and the other side is a stiletto. So if I don't have a purple thing in my hand, which I don't, I'm going to use this to help me push those bulky seams to hold them when I get close. Done. Now, when I get to the no pinning, so if you want to do a no pinner, if you want to live on the edge, I have everything there. I'm just going to line this up just like I did before. I like to start with the thin edge in under my presser foot and end at the thick, just so that thickness doesn't bulk up anything. And I just line it up and go. same thing here. Sometimes I have to lick my fingers, so you're welcome if this is a gift for you and I pieced it. You probably have some spit. And I'm just going to chain these, and we'll see you right back here in a second. Alright, so when I get to the long ones, because they're a little bit longer, especially when I'm not pinning, I'm not going to stitch as fast. Like, I'm not going to pedal to the metal when I do this, because I want to make sure everything stays nice and together. So I'm going to start. I've lined it up. And I'm stitching the whole time, keeping an eye on those pieces staying together. Some of you, this might stress you out. Pin. There's nothing that says you have to or you don't have to. I just sometimes don't. That's done, and now I have my last two pieces, which are my negative space blocks. Now everything's pieced, and we'll see you back at the ironing board. Alright everyone, we are back, and I have trimmed, or not trimmed, I didn't do anything. I cut them apart with my, what is this called? My Blade Saver thread cutter. Yes. I think, well, this video is going to be done and gone by then. So I have separated them all in the pairs. Again, hardest thing to do is keep them all in pairs and lined up. So I'm going to hit these with an iron. And I usually iron them in pairs so I can lay them out and press the seams opposite. Some of you are going to press your seams open. That's okay. You do you. I don't like pressing my seams open. I don't like an open seam. I know you get better piecing that way. And guess what? This is going on the couch. So I think my couch and my dogs are going to love the piecing the way it is. I actually might give it away to a friend, but we'll see. I've been meaning to make a quilt for her for a very long time. So, like here, I have my two blocks. If I press them both to the green, and I have to open it up to make sure this, I'm not lying. If I press them both to the green, these center seams are going to nest, and that's what I'm looking for. So when I lay them out, I lay them so they look identical to each other. I always press to set the seam. And I like to finger press before I press, because like I said last week, or I think it was last week, I'm not a good presser, because I iron more than I press. And so I found, like, the way that helps me is I finger press them down and then come back in with my iron. And then I steam it to death. And I'm okay with that. So now I have my two blocks. When together, the seams will nest in the center. And they're also nested on the outside in those outside seams. So let me do it on a small one so you see. And in this case, I'm just going to press everything to the green, because then I can remember. It's a lot less confusing when you only use two colors. But this is fun. This would be a fun quilt. I mean, let's be honest. This Christmas fabric is cute. Or like any Christmas fabric would be very cute. Ooh, I just hit a ring. Apple's telling me thank you. I think I stood up 12 times today. It's so weird. Just in case you do have an Apple Watch, you can long arm on that long arm all day, and it doesn't know that you're standing. It's so annoying. And you'll get this message, time to stand, and you're like, I've been long arming for 8 hours. What do you mean time to stand? I've been standing all day. So, drives me insane. Drives me bonkers. Batty? All of the above? Oops, set my seam. I don't know why I'm making you watch this, but there, the little music for you. It also goes a lot faster when you only have 5 blocks and not 42. I think there's 42. There might be 46 or 47. I think there's actually an odd number. And finally, my negative space blocks. And now we have all our blocks pressed. So, here's where I pin. I tend to pin anything. So let's start with negative space because this is what we have here. Let's get the blade saver out of the way. So I just have my 2 colors, just like here, just like here, just like here, and over here. Anywhere you see an empty space, that's what's going on. Put them together. My seams are going to nest. So where my seams are nested, and you're going to have your own style, your own way of doing this. You might not even do this. Sometimes I don't, but most of the time I do. I'm going to throw a pin on the right side of that seam. So they're nested. So I'm going to go right side because I want to be able to stitch, hit this seam, hit where those nest, and then pull this pin out. And that's usually the only pin I put in. Now, on these regular blocks, on our piece blocks, I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to put that pin at that center intersection because these need to line up a little bit better. We want nice sharp points here, and we also want really nice sharp points on the outside, and then we'll look for them too when we start adding rows together. So how we're going to do this, if your seams nest, you can throw a pin on the, I'm going to say on the downward side, but because our seams nest, we're going to be pinning into the seams of probably the lower piece. It just depends on how you're holding it. Now I'm also going to do this at both of the intersections where my seams come together. Again, they nest, so I'm going to nest them, pin, and I'm not following that seam. I'm going perpendicular, so my pins are going up and down, and my seam is running, or I'm going to sew right and left. Some people do this opposite, and again, if you have a way that works for you, please do it that way. This is just the way I like to do it. I get pretty good results. If I am being a stickler and I'm like, this needs to just be the best pieced quilt I've ever done, I will put seams on both, or seams. I will pin both sides of that seam. And if I'm getting really crazy, I will put my fabric together, fold back in kind of a diagonal, eyeball that 1/4 inch, make sure everything's nice and lined up, and put a pin in so I know it's a 1/4 inch in and it's going right through both of the seams. I can see it going through the seam on the top and the bottom. Keep this pin perpendicular and pin both sides around it. And then this pin comes out. And so now I have 2 pieces holding that seam intact. I do that more so if I have 2 seams pressed the same way, or like my Judy Niemeyer quilts that I do. those you don't always get an option because they're paper pieced where those seams are going to fall. So if you do have something that has a lot of seams coming in, those legit kit quilts, there's places where there's like 7 or 8 seams coming in at an intersection. You can do that trick. Like basically mark the 1/4 inch on both pieces, go in and put a pin going like a long arm pin. I have a I just threw a pin somewhere. I am barefoot a lot. I'm going to have to find that. But your pin is going in like perpendicular to the fabric. That's holding everything in place. And then you can pin on the right and the left. So I'm going to finish pinning these. We'll see you over at the machine in a minute. I am happy to report that I found the pin that disappeared. Alright, so here's my stack of goodies. I'm going to pick up my top one and not get pinned on something else. These are all pinned. Everything's good. I have my stiletto to help me. I'm definitely going to be using the heck out of my stiletto. We'll get started. And I like to stitch this in as soon as it hits the seam, because I can see where it's stitched. I'll pull this next pin out. Go to my next one. Seam. Seam. Finish. And then this is how I'm going to piece these. I think when I'm trying to think of how I did mine, I think I did all of my large ones and then all of my small ones. But sometimes I feel like I get things, they get monotonous for me really quick doing the same piece. So I might have done half of the large and then come back and done half of the small and switch back and forth. Just because they're different sizes. Although it's the same thing, I feel like that switches it up a little bit, changes things up a little bit. Part of my crazy brain. So I'm just going to continue these, and we'll see you back on the ironing table. So now, in theory, all of our blocks are put together. Now it's time to press. When I press these, you can press them open, you can press them however you want. So I just press them to a side, and you can't really think about how the seams are going to nest, I guess. Because this is a center seam, this would also be a center seam. So it's all the center seams, but you don't know what your layout is yet. You're gonna have to go in and put things down. So some of these matched and some of them didn't. It's not anything that you can kind of predetermine or pre-plan just because we don't know where things are going. If you knew exactly your layout before you piece this, yeah, you can kind of, this one goes to the right, this one goes to the left and go on. But in this case, we don't know. It's going to be kind of haphazard. The nice thing about where all of these intersections are around here is that there's no points. There's nothing that really, unless your background is super stark, like you have yellow and black or something, if these points aren't exactly perfect and spot on, you're not going to see it because you're using some low volumes. Everything kind of melds together. Because even like I look at this block, I know this is 2 colors. You can probably see it as 2 colors. But that intersection's pretty good. But do I have one that's horrible? Most of them are pretty good because they nested, but Like this one, for instance, is off just a tiny bit, maybe an eighth. You're never going to see it. The person's never going to see it unless like someone comes and looks really close. And what did I tell you last week? If your friend comes and looks really close and says, oh, these seams don't match up, get new friends. Say, oh, Merry Christmas to you too, and then open their gift and keep the chocolate, okay? We don't need people in our lives like that. I actually taught, it was just so kind of wonderful. I taught their original sampler. I taught it at a shop. So it was like a 6-month, once a month we would meet and make a block. And one of the women was just so down on herself, and I finally just kind of talked to her to the side one day. I said, what's going on? She's like, well, my seams don't match up and this and that. And when you're using those curved rulers, you know, you really have to use a different angle. Like, you really have to use a different curve to fit and make things fit correctly. And on those rulers, there's only one. It's only one curve that we're cutting the whole time. So naturally, things aren't going to be perfect. It's not making a perfect circle. And when you're trying to match things up to make a perfect circle, you're just never going to get it. And finally, I told her, I said, you know, why do you feel like it has to be perfect? And she was taking the class with one of her friends, and her friend happened to not be there that day, but she said, so-and-so told me that I should pull it all out and start over because my seams weren't good and my blocks weren't good. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. I said, she's not here today, and she's not teaching the class, and I think your stuff looks fabulous. It just, there's so many other things to worry about, right? Like that a seam that's off a little bit is not the end of the world. Again, not going into a show. Maybe if I was putting something into a show, I would be a little bit more. The only time I really get crazy is Judy Niemeyer's. I'll do everything I need to. So here's our. That looks. I actually like that block. So here we have our pieces. Oh my gosh, I forgot to use my negative space block, but that's fine. I forgot to piece it together, but that's fine because I'm not, going to use it anyway. So now it's layout time. I would suggest going into a room and throwing them all on the ground haphazardly and then trying to move things. Give yourself 10 minutes because you will continue to move all that stuff around for 15 days. Until you think it looks right. You can always find something that might look better somewhere else. Give yourself 10 minutes. Or better yet, pull them out of a paper bag and just go where they lie. That's kind of what I did. But like, we're going to say, ooh, that looks good there. They're not going to stick. But you have your large and you have your small. And the pattern is the first row starts with a large. The second row starts with a small. The third row starts with a large. Fourth row small. If you're doing like what I did, I think it was the third row, I left a multiple out. So I think the first block, there's one large and one small in the third row. And those are the only piece blocks there. And then kind of in every other row, or every row going on, I think this row actually is full. It has all of the blocks in it. We can't see the very top. But then there was however many negative space blocks, and I just kind of pulled them out. And then I got to pick out of the blocks that I pulled out which ones I really wanted in. I love the look of these black blocks, but I had a lot of black in it, so I decided let's take some of the black blocks out because there was a lot of places it was too dark, but I really love the contrast of the black. But I also got that here with the blue. So I'm like, okay, well the blue and pink look really good together. I love this teal and pink. And I really liked this black and green. So the blocks that I really loved, definitely staying in. The other ones, I could take them out. So you're going to lay this out, and then I sewed them together as the row. So the full row. And basically, they were in another room. I went and I picked up a row, and then came in and sewed it. So that's what I'm going to show you how I did it, and how I usually piece things like this. And actually, I think I did 2 at a time. But in this case, I have 3 small and 2 large, which means the small has to start. And I hope you can see most of this. Let me move that out of the way. So first piece is going to be my negative space block. Not my negative space block, my filler block. So I'm going to put my filler block there. Good. All right, I had to walk around to see if you can actually see this. So this is my top. This is my filler block. And then I'm going to a small block. And then a large block. And then a small block. And then a large block. And remember when I told you the small and the large blocks, the colors were wrong? It's going to work, but they're totally wrong. And then a small block. And so what I'm going to do so you can see, because I don't have enough room to put all these. So there's a small, a large, and then we're going to, this continues here. But what I was talking about is there's a green, and then a red and a green. Because it should alternate. They should all kind of be the same. It didn't work. But then I got a red and a red, and a green and a red. So it kind of does work. It's making its own pattern. And then I have my other spacer block on the other side. So I'm going to stack these. So I'm pretending this is on one of the rows on my quilt. I think this is the actual row. I think that's how many it goes. 1, 2. Yeah, so this would be the length of your quilt. Just not in half. So now how I did it is I came and I stacked my pieces where it's like, here's piece 1, here's piece 2, here's piece 3. Let me see. How many of these do I have? Like I said, I have some old blocks. I think I have enough for this. This one will do the big blocks. So here's a big block. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I need 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Do it where they lie. 3, 4, 5. Look, this is just a practice and I'm already changing block colors. I'm so weird. Well, see, now I don't like that. First, second. It's that little one. There we go. First, second, third, fourth, fifth. And that works. Okay. So like I said, I did 2 rows at a time. So I'm going to take a large row and then the row that we're working on over to the sewing machine. All right, so I'm going to start sewing these. I have like basically row 1 and row 2. So I'm going to take my first 2 pieces on row 1. And this is where you kind of have to pay attention to what's going on. You have to pay attention to what you're doing or you're going to sew something to the wrong spot. Believe me, I know. I'm just lining up my edges. I'm not going to pin any of this because I want to be able to get through it. So this is row 1, this is row 2. I have the first 2 pieces of row 1, and I'm going to sew them together. Done. So now I'm grabbing the first 2 pieces of row 2. And I always line them up and then fold it back the way that they're supposed to lay. And of course, these aren't going to nest. I'm going to get my horrible ceramic scissors because they were close to me. Now I learned this trick. So I have my stiletto. When I get close, I am going to fold this back, and I know you can't see this, but I'm going to look at where that 1/4 inch, like eyeball that 1/4 inch, and make sure that those are going to line up right on top of each other, and then hold it with my stiletto as I go through. I can also do this one, that's way off, so I'm going to slide it over And I'm just going to manhandle this stuff a little bit to make it fit. Sometimes I'll sit here and I'll pin as I do this. It just depends on how my pressing was and how good things line up that day. So now I've taken back row 1. I just snipped it in the back. Can you see that? Yeah, I snipped it back there, and now I have row 1. Oh my gosh, can this chair be any squeakier? So, this is how it goes. I'm adding piece 3. And I just work back and forth until both these rows are done. Another one where they're not going to nest. Oh, you know what? I wonder. Oh, it's because the colors are the same. That's why. Like, why won't these nest? I try to keep the newest piece on top when I do this as well. Because that will keep me keep things in order for me, or help me keep things in order. And then I snip. And add piece 3. And I will just continue this along, and we'll see you back here when they're done. Alright, so now I have my 2 strips pieced, and I would press them and then go put them back into place. It doesn't matter, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to press. And this is one thing I did pay attention to, is these seams, how these ones are going to be pressed. So like row 1 was pressed up, row 2 was pressed down, row 3 was pressed up, row 4 was pressed down. And what I mean by that is if this were the top, because I have the spacer bar, maybe I'm pressing this down. So I'm going to start with my top on the bottom. Oh, my iron keeps turning off. And I will set the seam, fold it out, and press it. Come to the next one, set the seam, fold it out, and press it. And I'm going to go all the way down and work my way to the bottom. If this were this was row 1, this would be row 2, I would do the opposite. So if this large block is my bottom block, I start here and I press this way. Because that's going to make it easier when we add the rows together, at least on these, or on these intersection seams. The center ones, you're gonna do it where it lies, right? But the other ones, they'll be nice and nesting. So, iron is hot. So I press, open, and when there's a lot of weight that way, you'll pull it a little bit. And press. Ooh, that intersection worked out really nice. A few of these intersections nested, and then a few of them didn't because of how I pressed those original blocks, and they're all not made the same. So we'll see how well I did. But again, once it's quilted and you have all that quilting, and people are going to be looking at your quilting, your free motion, Except for you, Stacy. They'll be looking at your pro stitcher work. One day, all of you who are worried about your free motion, one day I'll get you there. One day, maybe next year. Next year's quilt is just going to be a piece of white fabric. No piecing. I do like the fact that we do everything. Like, I like that it's not just the long arm, but it's piecing and like you have a finished quilt at the end. Especially in December when we're all like doing stuff for other people, which is great, but we have to take time to do stuff for ourselves too. Here I come, Adam, what I can't think of the word, but whatever that word is that I'm looking for, it's the perfect one. So once I press them, I'm just going to hit everything. Oh man, I told you I'm not a good presser. And now I have my row. Like I said, I think I'm going to make this into a runner. I'm going to have to add some sides to it. But look at that. It looks nice and fun. My intersections, I wasn't really paying a ton of attention. That one's okay. All the other ones look pretty good. But really, don't spend a lot of time on if things don't look perfect. Let's see. There's one. So this week, what are you doing? You are piecing your blocks, putting your layout down, sewing them together, and completing your quilt top. Now, when you sew these strips together, and you're doing like row 1 to row 2, and row 2 to row 3, and everything like that, I pin. I'm going to pin every intersection. I'm going to pin between the blocks. Like, I'm going to pin this so that nothing moves. These are really long strips. You're going to have more luck keeping everything intact if you pin it. Now, some of you are like, no, I'm never going to do that. And that's, again, that's fine. For those of you who were like, oh, I wish my piecing was better. Tip, pin it. Pin this section. I don't pin everything, but I do pin really long strips just because it's going to hold its shape a little bit easier. It's going to hold things together easier. And especially when they're long, like this is going to have to feed out of your lap because it's a long strip. I guess you could do it so you're kind of you're putting the horizontal rows together. I'm just not a fan. I like to do it things the long linear way. The other thing you can do, and that like when I did mine, again, you have to keep things in order, but I pinned row 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and then 6 was just hanging out. Took those 3 to my sewing machine, and then came back, and then these 4 went as a unit. These 4 went as a unit. Came back, put those big ones together, and also pinned that final row on, and just went through the machine once, and then folded it around and went to the other side, and then everything was together. But I did, like I said, I do pin those. It just, to me, it's better results. And if you're like, I don't understand where you mean you were pinning, give me 1 second. Let me throw this together. I should quilt this. I should add some border pieces to it, quilt it, and give it away as a gift. As a drawing winner. 7K winner, you've won a runner that I made. What a horrible gift. I know some of you are going to say, no, that's a great gift, blah, blah, blah. Horrible gift. So here we are. So I have my 2 rows. Fold with one on top of the other. Usually I start with number 1 is on top, number 2 is on the bottom. Grab my pins, and I'm going to pin at row intersections. So here, and then I have these 2 pinned. I'm going to come maybe 2 more in the center, and then pick up my next one, and continue to do that, and just do that across the rows. So so that's it. That's it for this week. You are finishing piecing your blocks. you are putting your layout, setting everything together. If you haven't, make sure you go over to Facebook, So Fun Community. If you're on Facebook, the So Fun Community, join that, post pictures. Some people have been posting their pictures. Everybody's like, ooh, I love your fabrics. I love your fabrics. Ooh, I love your layout. So yeah, come join us over there. And what else? Make sure you follow me, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified when new videos post. And yeah, all of that stuff that I forgot to say when we started because I was too busy talking about myself on my shirt. Sorry, this is a long video. And if you think the video's long, it took me, what time is it? It's almost 5. It took me 2 hours to about 2 hours and 20 minutes just to film it because it's moving the camera and everything. And I still have to edit it. So I've already watched it like 3 times, and I filmed it. So just watch the whole thing. If you have questions, reach out. If you're going to load this before we start quilting it next week, I'm loading it on its side. So what that means is that I'm going to load it with like this side on the top, probably this side on the top because I want the negative space blocks up near the top. So it's going horizontally on the long arm because we're going to use rulers because this is how it's going to like sit on the couch, right? But we're going to use rulers and we're going to use the lines on this as a guide, or you're going to use Pro Stitcher. I'm going to show you how to do it without rulers if you want to use Pro Stitcher. So we're going to use this as a guide. It's much easier to stitch from one side all the way to the other than have just this much in your throat and work here. So instead, we're working like 2 or 3 rows at a time, and that's why we're going to load it sideways. All of you can do it. If you have a loft frame, 8 foot, you can do it. It's small enough to fit that loft frame. If you have anything bigger than 8 foot or 8 foot frame or bigger, you can do it. If you have a little foot frame, you can do it. You're just going to have to shift. So if you do load this before then, that's what you're going to do. Thank you for joining me. Love you guys. Have a, well, I'll see you before Christmas. Have a Merry Christmas if you don't join next week. Can't wait to see what you're doing. Don't forget to join the So Fun community. Like, subscribe, give me a like, smash that like button. I don't know, all that stuff. We'll see you in the next one. And remember, at the end of the day, it's just quilting. We want to have a good time. Bye.